On the third day of the 5th month, 1027 years after the fall of the comet, Emperor Ixen Sungazer lay in his bed, restless in his slumber. He was an ancient ruin, tall and proud. His simple crown sat by his bedside, brandishing the all-seeing eye on the forehead. But this night, his power to touch anything and see its past wouldn't help him. His ability to postulate a most likely future from all the collected past was eerily silent. A swash of useless images came to him. In his delirium, he asked himself if he'd lost control of his powers to this degree. But as he concentrated, he found more clarity. His eyes peered into spaces unknown, and he looked upon something towering over him. Like a brilliant metallic statue the thing posed. A wave that sounded like an ocean crashed. Then the statue smiled.
She would speak with you. I will be your translator. I am called the Watcher.
He could sense the currents of charge, the flow of energies he couldn't understand, and so he was silent.
30 years before your reign, the first telescopes were invented. Metallurgy, simple machines, science. Without dogma to get in the way of invention, humanity can advance alarmingly quickly.
The Emperor nodded.
It's always been my policy to encourage free invention.
Indeed, and in fact, it is the war against the demons that brought this empire together, no?
Ixen nodded again.
And would you say that your encouragement of technological growth fostered the rapid increase in development?
What do you mean by rapid?
He knew his laboratory and that of Sitha had grown by leaps and bounds, but that was partly because of...
Yes, rapid.
The Steel Man exclaimed.
In your 27-year reign, you've helped develop steam power, basic electricity, engines, mechanized production, and even primitive flying machines.
Ixen shook his head. He took a little pride in it, but he leveled with his host.
Steam power was Sitha, and they've partnered with us to distribute electrical power.
You don't find yourself at all impressive, do you? And why would you? You don't have any frame of reference. You know that other civilizations have taken 500 years to do what yours has done in 50, and they had oil, coal, natural gas in this period of development. You do not.
Ixen blinked. What other civilizations? What was coal?
I sense it is like our cosma, the tried metal.
Since ancient times, the eerie blue ore was used to build only the most superb weapons and armor as it alloys with iron. But in modern times, they found out that when heat is applied to it, it generates electricity. Spent cosma becomes evla, a black metal that could be used the same way to generate lift, used to make flying machines. And spent evla would turn it into ladon, gray, still retaining most of its strength and original properties, but drained of its energy. After a time, ladon would become cosma again. But nobody really understood the mechanism. A sound like thunder resonated about the dark room. The Watcher trembled and said,
I've said too much.
Ixen felt like his brain lurched forward in time, like he couldn't remember some of the conversation now. He shook his head, stirring in his slumber again. He'd have to reclaim that memory later with his powers.
Are you certain we're questioning the right person? Sounds like Katia would be an excellent candidate for one of our interviews.
The Watcher said, awaiting a reply. Then he nodded in understanding when another titanic sound replied. At once the Watcher turned back to Ixen, asking,
Do you know what Brill is?
It's a particle. Our methods of studying the microscopic aren't the best yet, but from what we can tell they are particles, force carriers for gnosis.
And what you call gnosis?
It's being able to affect reality with the mind. They called it magic in the old days.
A distant hum in the background made the Watcher nod. He responded.
Even your predecessors couldn't do that.
After a minute, the statuesque man smiled.
Ixen, our time is over. In time, we may contact you again. Until then, I will be watching.
Andy jolted awake. He sat, safely in his bed, as if the dream was truly a dream. But it didn't take a master of Akashic memory to realize it wasn't. Done in 50 years what others had done in 500? Was it the ore? What other civilizations? He'd always wondered. History only stretched back to a point where people were recording it, but his ability to delve into collective memory took him back even farther than that. And now he knew that humanity went back even further still. He'd always thought there was something more, and his people were advancing fast. But was it because of the precursors, the ancient humans who created many wonders lost to time? Did they intend their offspring civilization to be able to bring back the level of technology they enjoyed? Besides actual memories of times past, the Emperor could tap into a wealth of knowledge he still had not fully explored. From this part of the Akashic memory, he could only recall the knowledge, not how it was attained. But it was unerring, It taught him about electricity, nuclear forces, gravity. The implications were too numerous to mention. Ixen forced himself to pause. He had questions to answer about this meeting.
Was that Deus?
That was the Trivarian god. Their religion was the most widespread in his empire. It seemed to match the description Trivarius gave in his writings 700 years hence. Ixen smiled as he turned to set his feet on the floor. He'd been one of the few with direct contact with Deus. He'd met God, he mused. But then wasn't Deus supposed to be an all-powerful being, all-knowing, all-wise? Why then would it ask him the question, what is Vril? It begs the question, what is Deus? Whatever the answer to that, Deus's question was now paramount to him. Now he was doing a god's work.
What is Vril?
Thank you so much for listening. Did something completely different this time. This is the prologue from a book I wrote in 2012 called Warpfarer. It's available on Lulu and Amazon. If you like this, give me some indication and maybe I'll continue telling the story on YouTube here. Images were generated using Midjourney, voices with VA Synth. I've been experimenting with 11 Labs recently, so this may shift over to that. And looking into AI generated video. Thank you very much. See you next time.